There's something happening right now that most people can feel, but they can't quite articulate. They want to step away from conventional medicine, and functional medicine was supposed to be the exit ramp from conventional care. But now they're spending thousands of dollars on tests. They're taking dozens of supplements, and they're now more overwhelmed than ever.
So today we'll talk about it. We'll talk about how to reclaim health without expensive protocols and dozens of supplements. But before we go further, I want to make it clear that this episode is not about an attack on functional medicine itself.
No, functional medicine isn't the problem, but the mindset people brought into it is. And you can take a drug-based outside-in worldview and apply it to supplements and peptides and labs and biohacks, and all you've done is repaint that same system, which is more of a natural slant.
It's frustrating when people are trying to get somewhere and there's a dozen windy steps in between here and there, which obviously healing is always going to be dynamic, but what is the pursuit?
Yeah, healing breaks down the moment that health becomes something that happens to you instead of something that you participate in. Some might say it happens to you, not because of you. And I want to be real clear here. This isn't blame, but most people were never taught to think this way. When the goal becomes optimization instead of restoration, we try to biohack our way into things. You're no longer practicing natural health. You're practicing a form of allopathy or capital M medicine or reductionist mindset.
The interesting thing is, if you look at all the commonly held beliefs that we are raised up in this modern world, they keep us a victim without us knowing it or recognizing it. And so the germ, we're a victim of that. The genes, we're a victim of that. The bad bugs, we're a victim of that. And I think that that's what hits me when you say that health is not something that happens to you, that it's a result of our own journey. And to most, optimization probably feels like a good thing. Like, why would we ever frame optimization as bad? But when the body's response is intelligent and we become the dictator of that response, like we know better with the limited knowledge we have, then that's where the unintended effects really flare. And that's where we can stay stuck, is if we're dictating what the body needs to do or should do instead of restoring and allowing the body to optimize itself.
Yeah, that's where it becomes protocol-driven medicine or protocol-driven healthcare, and protocols feel safe. They feel authoritative. They feel like, hey, I'm moving towards something, but they remove responsibility sometimes. It's not all the time. Like, there's certain protocols that you take in order to restore, but it very easily and often does slip into a replacement for judgment with compliance and just not being in tune anymore. And most people don't want that. They want certainty, but and protocols sometimes sell certainty, but it's not the answer. The answer is restoration of vitality from the inside out. So the body doesn't heal in straight lines or checklists. It just doesn't heal like that. It heals through capacity and adaptability and resilience, and creating that is an inside job and not an outside job.
Unfortunately, it's something that no one else can really do for us when you break it down like that. You just said 3 words: resilience, adaptability, and margin. And my doctor can't help me with any of those.
No. Well, fortunately, I say fortunately because at some point data and doctors and specialists, they were the flagship of the old model, but they, unfortunately, people have exited in droves from that model. Like they recognized, hey, like I don't really want somebody dictating this protocol to me or at me based off of this large sample size that might not apply directly to me. And this is the idea of we want more personalized medicine, right? This is the birth of personalized medicine, which, you and I have talked about this a lot. And so I'll talk to the audience right now. Friends, that is a slippery slope to gene editing software. just personalized medicine. When you hear personalized medicine, just wait, because they will test your genes and then track your genes and then try to manipulate your genes even without your consent. This is not prophecy. This is, well, maybe it is. Maybe it's somewhat prophetic, but it's with a lot of knowledge of what's coming. So
I like how you say gene editing software, which it is. Biotech is putting technology into your biology, but it was an interesting spin on it.
Yeah, well, the idea is that if we outsource our thinking and create dependence, we do become a victim. But it's a victim of our own captivity. Like, it's a victim of our own choice. Like, we shut the door and locked the cage, and here we are. And the idea of like someone causing you to be victimized, like, that usually rubs me. It usually rubs me that like the scenario caused me to be a victim. It's like, no, that you participated in this in some way. And we do this with allowing experts, or quote unquote experts, to dictate our health. And this, again, it's outsourced healthcare is what we're really tiptoeing around right now. And functional medicine, certainly, while it has its place, it still can be a system of protocol and reductionist medicine with more of a natural spin.
What's amazing is we have an entire generation, Gen Z, that has been told one of the most common things they hear from their doctors is that they are a genetic anomaly. I mean, their generation has been over-medicated more than any generation. They have worse health outcomes than any generation so far, and they're being told they're genetic anomalies, yet they are the generation that is willing to start asking good questions and to step out of this and to entertain the thought, maybe my body isn't broken. Maybe it's the result of the system that I was raised up in.
Yeah. Well, and if you believe your body's broken, you're always going to need someone else to manage it.
Right. And there's no trust. There's no trust at all there. It's a tough place. It's really a tough place to be in.
Well, it's a tough place to be in. It also creates a level of fragility that is very difficult to unwind. When you believe you're broken and you need somebody else to manage your condition, you end up in a state that is very easily manipulated. You become fragile emotionally, you become fragile even conditionally, even within your physical body, and you're more easily controlled.
That's why everyone says that with freedom comes great responsibility, and to understand that someone might say I'm fragile, but I get to choose whether or not I believe it. And all the standards, all the circumstances might say I'm fragile, but I get to choose whether or not that's my path. It might seem reckless, but it's living. Like, wouldn't we rather be free and live than have a belief system that keeps us under control?
So the idea of functional medicine, I think this is very clearly found with the whole peptide thing. Peptides and GLP-1s they're a case study because they're framed as natural. And what we're talking about is the hijacking of natural, or the, call it the bastardization of natural health care. And these things, peptides as an example, we did a whole episode, is that they're framed as natural, they're marketed as advanced, and they're delivered with the same outside-in promises that medicine has always used. And yet they're the furthest thing, maybe not the furthest thing from natural, but they certainly are not natural in that sense. And I want to be clear on this. It's not that they are bad in general. It's just how they're being framed is not accurate. And what I think is going to happen, this is my belief, and we're going to maybe get into, it's not conspiracy mode, but it is a little bit. You ready? You don't know what I'm going to say, do you?
Mm-mm.
Is I think medicine is sitting back and watching all this happen, and their medical doctors and medical community, they're just waiting for the fallout from all this. And they're going to say, see, I told you natural healthcare didn't work. See, I told you it was harmful, as another example.
Right, because it's a interesting form of natural healthcare.
It's not natural healthcare.
Correct.
It's not, I mean, it's,
But people believe it is. That's why they're going, because they want something different.
yeah, well, I mean, you see this with people who burn through the peptides and still take ivermectin and then they stall and they crash. And again, conventional medicine is like, yeah, it didn't work. Well, yeah, they're right. But they're wrong about, they're wrong about it in a sense that it didn't work. No, it's not, it didn't work. It's that doesn't work. It's not natural health care. Then that was never natural health care.
Well, one of the strongest illustrations you've ever given me that helped me come to an understanding on the distinction here between natural health care and functional health as it's currently being used is that it's not building vitality, it's borrowing it. Mm-hmm. And you're always going to have to pay at some point. There will always be interest on borrowed gains. And so that really helped me understand that if we are simply accruing debt within our vitalistic model, where are we going?
Yeah. And it didn't fail because natural health is flawed. It failed because natural health was hijacked by the same outside-in model that it was meant to replace. That's I think the heart of this is that it's not natural health when we take an allopathic outside-in approach in with a pill or a supplement or an herb or a lotion or whatever potion, and then try to manipulate or trick the body. That's still capital M medicine, just with an herb.
So you're basically saying that functional medicine is a psyop?
If it's not, it's vulnerable to becoming one. Any system that trains people to distrust their own judgment, rely on constant intervention, and outsource decision-making will eventually serve control, even if that was never the intention.
And that's against natural law. So that in and of itself shows you that there's something awry. But so what's the other option?
Well, the other option is self-directed healing. And again, it doesn't mean doing it alone. It means that you are being oriented correctly from the outset to make principled decisions, that you have those guardrails that we've talked about in previous episodes on how you make health and healthcare decisions, who you allow to speak into your most sensitive areas in your life, which is your health and healthcare decisions, who you trust, but also who you lock arms with and where you're going. And again, there's a lot of good intentioned people out there that will say something really destructive. And I believe the enemy will use those people in order to sow seeds of doubt that your body is fearfully and wonderfully made. It's designed to heal, that it becomes devitalized, but it can be revitalized. It can be revitalized with the things that we do. And who we become, not just the things that we do like a checklist or a task list, but the things that we do to revitalize and remove interferences and let the body do its job, which is heal.
Letting the body do that takes a lot of conviction, choosing to allow instead of biohack, build capacity. And that's where each decision builds a muscle for you to test your belief, to understand, oh, look, I let this fever take its course. And I rebounded and felt great the 2 days after I rebounded, whereas before it would take me weeks to recover. Or I allowed my child to fight this naturally and they hit a growth spurt right afterward. So just like building that conviction and muscle is what walks us down that path. It's not something that really happens overnight to be able to walk in that confidence.
That confidence and conviction is a muscle to grow over time. And you benefit by growing that muscle. There's certain industries that largely don't benefit by you growing that muscle. There's entire industries that might suffer by you growing that muscle, just the pharmaceutical companies and others. And there's a lot of industries that thrive off of you staying stuck in fear and dependency. But when you grow that muscle of conviction and confidence in your own body, man, that's long lasting. Man, that's generational. Man, that's something that your kids and grandkids look up to and they say, remember when? And remember that, and they pass it down from generation to generation. But if you have if if you have very little trust and you run to the expert or run to the medicine cabinet or run to your pantry, wherever you keep your supplements, and you just take the pills, what is that doing? What trust do we have? BJ Palmer once said, "Do you have more faith in a spoonful of medicine than that which animates the living world?"
I love that quote.
You're talking about the same power that created the stars, the moon, the sun, the earth, the trees, the plants that you see are vital, the animals that thrive in nature, is the same power that's inside of you and I that animates our bodies.
It flips your beliefs on their head, because that quote by Palmer mirrors something that we see biblically. Greater is he who is in the world. Greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. Mm-hmm. And if we believe that, then look at the most sensitive decisions that you make in life. Take, for example, a woman's pregnancy. Do you trust man's metrics with your rapidly developing child more than you do the innate divine process that was initiated within you without the help of man? This is not something that man can improve upon. And so if we challenge those beliefs with our most vulnerable and sensitive junctures, that's the way to grow that muscle faster than ever. That's why I love talking to women about pregnancy and birth, because it's one of the hardest issues to tackle, but it's one of the greatest returns on health and vitality and freedom.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is functional medicine a psyop?
I'm going to go back there.
Well, I don't think we can not talk about the fact that there's all these companies who are sprouting up seemingly out of nowhere and tout themselves as the future of preventative medicine. If you look at the private equity groups who back these venture firms, man, there's reason to be concerned here. I mean, some of these firms, one of them in particular, they actively invest into infrastructure projects like biometric surveillance, digital ID, the World Economic Forum aligned biotech initiatives. And you have to think about, where is your health data going? Because it's your passport, it's your scorecard. It could be a potential for what Catherine Austin Fitts calls as digital slavery, where your biology, where your health metrics, where your sleep, where your blood chemistry, your heart rate, your genetic profile, your data all gets stored into a place that is vulnerable to then be linked, and they say it's de-identified. You just don't know. And we don't know. And it is susceptible. And again, I believe that this is one of the things to be aware of for 2026 and beyond.
Well, there is a rage within the community of functional health and getting out of tag and treat, so to speak, that believes that data is king and that data is the cost of being healthy. And I think that that's what we need to challenge is, what do we need to know and why? Do you need to know your data, your sensitivities in order to make the next right decision? And I think some people believe you do, that you actually have to read that my body is sensitive to strawberries before you can heal.
Well, some of these things are useful. I would agree that it's sometimes useful to know, but you gotta ask, at what cost and how far do we go with it? Like, is it useful to know your heart rate on a long run? I think so. I like that. I like knowing that. Is it useful to know that you have food sensitivities to glyphosate? No, because you shouldn't eat glyphosate. You just shouldn't consume it. Is it useful to know that your body reacts very poorly to thimerosal, or like aluminum and aluminum preservatives and mercury? Well, are you intending on getting exposed to any of these things? What are you going to do with it? That's the kind of the question here, is what are you going to do with the information? Are you going to participate in a heavy metal cleanse and go straight at it? Okay, if you are, you better know what the heck you're doing.
Right. It's the question you have to ask is, what is this going to change about my trajectory? It cannot just be a shiny object or a good idea. It's what is this going to change about my behavior, about my pursuit of healing?
Yep.
And if it's not going to, then reassess. But the other thing is the hijacking of our own embodiment or being in tune with our sleep is also something that we need to be aware of.
It's critical.
So if we're gathering all this data on our sleep and our heart rate and, across every day and your body battery and kind of even treating us like a robot of how much juice do we have throughout the day. And then this is all being stored day after day after day after day to know you more intimately than you know yourself. And you become disembodied and unaware of how you actually feel without seeing numbers. And so there are trade-offs. Absolutely. And I think that the biosurveillance is one of our biggest threats of 2026. I mean, look at the UK. They've preceded us in a lot of this, and they just announced that they are issuing digital IDs for babies now.
Right.
Since when do babies need an identity?
Yeah. And listen, to step outside of this, one of the ways that I have stepped outside, if I'm going to use a Garmin watch for my long runs as an example, I just make sure that that is not being linked anywhere. Mm-hmm. It's not going anywhere. If I download an app with a scale, we got a scale recently. I didn't know that you had to download an app in order to read the scale. And sure enough, it wants to automatically link to Apple's health thing inside of there. And so I'm saying no, and swiping the other direction and all that. You have to take a couple of extra steps if you're going to do these things. And I would encourage everyone to look at all of the linked devices right now, and you can cut it off now, and there's going to be a huge gap. And those types of gaps are essential to not building a system of control. Using the bags that Catherine Austin fit. I keep going back to that, but that's, again, it was my favorite episode of 2025. So, but we're talking about stepping outside of systems. You shouldn't need a $2,500 or $5,000 buy-in in order to start getting healthy. You can functional health your way into health by doing it yourself. DIY functional health. And go back to the episode where we talked about the 5-system approach. That's an example of a DIY functional health. You can step outside of the system by taking ownership over your health and walking through this. Now, if you want help and you need help and you have a chronic issue, then find somebody who thinks vitalistically, who will help navigate this with you. But that person should have a deep belief in the body's restorative power from the inside out and not try to supplement you back to health. It's just somebody who's going to journey this with you has to trust the body that it can become revitalized itself.